think debate is a very productive tool if used well.
Right.
It is the essence of democracy. But what is happening for a very long time on many channels and many panels is not debate. It is a cockfight.
To my mind, debates never made much sense in the present day context when you're talking about news as a whole.
It's a reality show. Panel discussions have become reality shows. There has to be equilibrium in what you are trying to do, how you go about it, and what the audience extracts from it. If that equilibrium is not there, then you're just doing time pass, which too many people are. People who are established or connected or have access, the likelihood of their success is so much higher that there's very little incentive for others to try. The fact is, many of us got to where we got because of access. And the news world is full of people because of access. And most of them are lazy, mediocre people.
Abhinandan, for joining in for this conversation today. Thank you, Aadhar. Thank you, Abhinandan. We are all patching in together for a great conversation with the man. I think I won't just say a fan moment, but someone who has really helped us understand media largely over time, right, Aadhar? I mean, that's how you would say.
Totally. Like I was very skeptical about me. I've been very skeptical about media lately. I'm going to admit to that. But I've been following your work, and it's actually given me a lot of hope. Because it made me ask a lot of questions, so to speak. And that was one of my major reasons to kind of really try and speak to you, was that I could ask you some of those questions and educate myself, and with this educate other people also.
Abhinandan, to start with your journey, I mean, Highway on the Plate, you have produced that, right? So we know as a part of a media aspect, production, reporting, presentation, everything is a part of it. Because when we train into journalism, it starts with you have to work on the desk. You have to work on the flashes. So for Abhinandan, how has this journey been from being a producer in a show like Highway on My Plate, which went really viral at that time, and viral was not even the word known.
Yeah, it wasn't.
And then now being a reporter, you've done your share of reporting, and now you've come to be called the founder. I don't know how it feels to be called a founder of some enterprise. And so you're a businessman there shortly to say. So can you tell us how are you knowing media like throughout?
I got my break in 1995. There was a company called Newslaundry, which is a part of the India Today group.
Yes.
India's first news video magazine, started by Malhotra, who's also the founder of India Today, the magazine. So I was just very lucky to get a job like that. It was the job of a researcher. It wasn't the job of a reporter. Back then, there was no daily news. Back then, there was no daily news other than the Doordarshan bulletin. So Newslaundry was I think it was monthly, because when I joined, it was monthly, and then it became weekly shortly after I joined on Doordarshan. But the cassette, so you had a lot of time to do your stories, as in the reporters did, which meant that they could have 2 or 3 researchers to do the research. And there was no Google back then where you could, email had just not come out. I mean, email was just starting. So, I mean, we didn't even use email back then. My job was to go get an India Today used to have this big library in Connaught Place in the inner circle. So there were these things where you like turned the wheel and these big steel frames would move. So there was this corridor full of, like in old movies, you see those files are lined up. So that had like all the newspapers, magazines, date wise. So there was no like, it wasn't like I could Google Altaf Hussain. I remember the first story I was to do research on was MQM. That's the Muttahadi Qawmi movement. It is a political movement in Pakistan, which you need not know much about. I think it's pretty irrelevant now. Back then, Altaf Hussain was this star in Pakistani politics, or kind of, not a star, but he was an irritant in the side of the establishment. So I had to go. So you just actually went through magazines, and if you saw any article on Altaf Hussain, you did photocopy it. Then you just went through magazines. So you could end up going through like 100 newspapers and magazines and get like 20 photocopied copies. And then you created a file and then you gave it to the reporter. And the reporter, so that was your job as a researcher. So that's what I did for about 3 months. And if you were lucky, you got a chance to do a bit of reporting or you go to an interview. And that's how the initiation in Newsstrike used to be for reporters. You start off as researchers. I was just very lucky to report to people like Madhu Trehan, Alpana Kishore, Sabrina Dhawan. They were like outstanding reporters. And then, SP Singh came and we learned a little more about daily news. So, but once daily news started, Newstrack's magic was gone. It was finished. And then I think 4 or 5 years later, it started off as a channel, but I had quit in 99. I quit and I started a production house, which is small screen. And first 4 years was a struggle because 2099, there was a huge .com bust and the markets were, it wasn't quite like the Lehman moment, but it was pretty bad. 4 years was a big struggle. We used to make very tucha type marketing films and sales films. And then you got some commercials, you got some TV shows, then Discovery, Nat Geo, all these non-fiction channels started launching in India. So we were doing travel shows and non-fiction shows for a bunch of them. And then it kind of grew. Highway on a Plate was super successful. And meanwhile, before that, I started writing a political satire show for NDTV called Gustakhi Maaf from the Great Indian Tamasha, these political marionettes. And then with God's grace, I mean, I think it has a lot to do with luck and access. So a lot of people are very kind to us. We got a lot of work.
Right. I'm just going to jump in with something, Abhinandan, because it's been, I did kind of look a lot of this up and I saw this journey. So it's interesting to see how you've seen the entire evolution, my personal opinion not counted, of news reportage, news media as it is today. So I really want to ask you about the current state of news, where it is, what you think it is, if it even holds true to what it was supposed to be, which is the fourth pillar of democracy, so to speak.
To come to it being the fourth pillar of democracy, I think as a generalization, I would say it has failed, but that doesn't mean that there are not good reporters and good news platforms and institutions out there. There are. And I'm sure there are many more than languages because I predominantly consume English and Hindi news. And out of that also Hindi is a smaller chunk that I consume. I consume Hindi electronic news, but not necessarily print. I mean, maybe there are Malayalam, Bengali, Marathi, Tamil, news platforms that are doing great work. And I'm sure there are a few. But as a general chunk of the way the direction is of news, where it's headed, or where it's been heading for a while, it has failed as a fourth pillar of democracy. And I say that because why is news called the fourth pillar of democracy? It's called the fourth pillar of democracy because democracy assumes a certain information symmetry or a certain informed electorate. An informed electorate is a very important part of democracy. So if you have an electorate that is uninformed, misinformed, or worse still, being informed of everything that is untrue or things, and it's not being informed, it is being molded.
Right.
So is news predominantly telling you this happened? And even that may be compromised or biased, that reporting, but it is reporting. Mm-hmm. I can make up my mind. Right. Or has news become, this is what you should think, you know what, you're a horrible person and Aadhar should be in prison. Dude, tell me what he did. I'll decide if he should be in prison.
Saying don't sell the things to us. That's like, don't do content selling.
Yeah. So electronic media, because of its ability to evoke reactions and immediate responses, it appears to have an impact that is disproportionately larger to the effort that has gone into making it. It's just making people shout is not news. You're not informing the electorate.
Right. Did you see this kind of happen? Like, did you see this happening in any way, or like, were we always headed there, or is this like the present state of it all? Where, I mean, we're even attacking news channels now. I would kind of go by the digital sense of things, but have we been headed here for a while?
I think we've been headed here for a while. I didn't think it would go this insane. I mean, I must admit, but The fact that we started 2012 with a mission of saying that we will not take ads. And I'm talking about like right now, you have ads withdrawn and Amul and Bajaj and all this. I'm talking, and 2012 is when he launched Newslaundry. We had started, preparation for it in 2011. And right from the beginning, it is an ad-free platform, because the moment you become dependent on ads, you will compromise on news. And that had become clear to me in, I'd say, the mid 2000s to late 2000s. And just to give you a small idea. And again, I don't want to say there are any villains in this, or it is just the nature of the industry.
Right.
Because if the logic of gravity is to, if I take this, it's going to drop down, it's not going to fly up,
Right.
So there are certain things that have a logic which is very hard to fight. It is just that on what terms do you kind of go with the flow? It was clear to me that if ads is your mainstay for revenue, you will end up compromising your journalism. It doesn't matter how good your intentions. Because if I have to pay 2,000 salaries at the end of every month, I would have to be very reckless to pick pangas where that may stop me from paying my salaries. I mean, and I think there is an argument to be made, and I'm not saying that I'm making that argument right now, because it is not a black and white simple argument. There is an argument to be made. Maybe I should do a few compromises. At least my staff is
not doing it.
Let me make 10 compromises. At least I can keep 2,000 people employed. There are various ways, but as long as you're based on ads, you will make news a circus, and you will compromise on journalism. But to the extent that it's gone now is so yes, that is something that I saw happening. And I don't want to give too many specific instances. I just think it's unfair on the people. But every channel has done some major compromises.
Obviously, for me to go and watch news as a consumer, I need a motivation. And if you ask me to pay for that also, it's real tough. So subscription model doesn't work easy every time for everyone. So dependency on ad is natural, isn't it?
It was natural. I don't think it is natural anymore. I think people who do not want to explore other, large news organizations do not want to explore other revenue models and other revenue streams are bound to become irrelevant going forward. And I think it is a typical Indian entrepreneurial laziness. Indian entrepreneurship is a very new thing. Traditionally, only those Indians did well who were either the sons and daughters of established businesses, or those who could do some tigdam and some jugaad. India did not have a truly entrepreneurial kind of culture. And it still is very compromised. I mean, I don't know whether you guys have seen that Harshad Mehta series that's come on.
I've seen that, yeah.
I think you should watch it. It gives you an idea. And while I don't have any sympathy for Harshad, what he did, but when he says that in India, if you want to make it big, this is the only way, and he's right. So I think because there is not an entrepreneurial kind of culture, because people who are established or connected or have access, the likelihood of their success is so much higher that there's very little incentive for others to try. In such an environment, people are lazy. There is no reason Times, India Today, NDTV, all these should not have been exploring other revenue models going forward. But they were just sitting because they were happy because there was very little, the entry barrier is very high. Even, I won't say I'm a super success or anything, but I think I've done pretty well.
Yes. Innovation has been great. I think your innovation has been really nice.
But the fact is, it is because of access. I had the access to walk into Madhu Trihan's office because I had a friend working there, and I had a friend working there because I went to, the most privileged schools in the country, and I have a friend circle. So even if my dad is not a big shot, my mother's not a big shot, the fact is many of us got to where we got because of access. And the news world is full of people because of access. And most of them are lazy, mediocre people. And even the ones who are in the top of every channel, news organizations, generally they're very mediocre. I have worked with most of them. They are mediocre people who went to great schools, who can speak English with
fabulous
confidence.
English.
But but really they don't have much to offer. By way of assumption, they don't have a fight. You got to have the fight for a fight if you're in any entrepreneurial venture, especially in news, because it's all about fight.
Right.
And B, you have to want to create some new innovations. If all your success has been because I went to school with so and so and now he's minister and I went to college and he can invest in me, then there's no incentive to want to say, no, dude, I got to figure out a better way. Now,
Right.
coming to your question, Anku, right?
Yes, yes.
About, I'm not saying don't take ads at all today. But today, technology allows you to have other revenue streams. If today ads are still your primary, attention grabber or your primary, occupier of any revenue innovation or the priority you're giving, then you're just being lazy. Like I said, when you had broadcast, there was no other way. And I've said this on many platforms I've spoken to. When you had only print, there's no other way because it is a one-way communication. Technology didn't allow it. You see, you couldn't write books and print them if there was no printing press.
Right.
But once a printing press came about, if then I'm saying I still maintain the oral tradition, then you're a buffoon. Because there's a printing press, go bloody print your book and distribute it. When there was no printing press, fine, there was oral tradition. There was no internet, fine. Ads was the only way. But now there is a way. Go sort it out. Figure out ways. I'll tell you about Newstrack. Newstrack, at its prime success, it was a video cassette. I have them in office. I don't have them here.
I would want one copy, please, after this. I had asked Madhu ma'am also once, and she said, I'll hand it over. If you have anything to archive and send it to us, I would want to hold one.
I have a bunch of them. I think, in fact, the most memorable is the Mandal Commission one and the Ayodhya one. Those tapes, which was banned actually. So people actually buy that. I don't know how much it was for back then. Maybe $80, $90, $100. And I mean, I couldn't afford to buy it, but I had a VCR at home. So I would go rent it from the video library in Dehradun for 5 rupees. So it was, so ads was one thing, but there was also a way to get people to buy it. And news will always have a lower viewership than in entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Anku, what you said, that's not a new thing that now there's sitcoms. They were always there. Neither has news just been invented, nor have sitcoms. Even when I watched television when I was young, Chitrahar had more viewership than, say, Sugam Sangeet.
Yes.
or the documentary that came before Krishi Darshan. That's always going to be the case. But as long as you have a critical mass of people willing to invest their time and some resources in news, it's enough. You don't need everybody to pay for the lighthouse. But once it's made, it provides light to all the ships, big and small.
You brought in entertainment and news viewership, and I want to talk about debates because to me they're more entertainment than they are news. And okay, I know that this is probably my personal opinion, so at the risk of being biased here, to my mind, debates never made much sense in the present day context when you're talking about news as a whole, because isn't news supposed to be presentation of facts to inform the electorate, like you mentioned, right? Or if we are talking about debates, there is room for nuanced conversations. Do you see that happen at all? Was debate a format that the news channels just, which started in the right place, have just turned into this weird mass of shouting matches?
I think debate is a very productive tool if used well.
Right.
It is the essence of democracy. Better ideas prevail when we challenge each other's ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So there is merit in that. Also, it gives you a way to engage, if not engage with the people, but engage with the ideas of people who have thought this through, who are area experts,
Mm-hmm.
Who are, historians, who are philosophers, who are political scientists, political philosophers. So there is a lot of value that can be extracted from conversations, often conversations where people disagree with each other, which is in a sense debate.
Mm-hmm.
But what is happening for a very long time on many channels and many panels is not debate. It is a cockfight. So, do murgon ko ladao, or then So now
See
that
what
is
happens.
not debate. I mean, debate, like for example, let's take the example of people like this, the Bango Dangal, whatever he does, Sardana. You see some of his shows, you see some of the shows of the Sanjana Kashyap, you see some of the shows of Navika and Rahul Shiv Shankar, Arnab ka to baat hi chodo. That's, you see what they do. They'll like, try to provoke the other person.
Yeah, it's
They'll
more like a
say,
Big
"Arey,
Boss
aapko
house,
ye
you know.
and most of these anchors, and the thing is about an anchor will never have necessarily more information than, or should not have more knowledge than the panelists you invite, because your panelists should be able to add more because they are area experts. But what's happened right now is that you don't have to be an area expert, you just have to be able to talk confidently. I'll give you an example. I'll give you my example. I have not deleted those texts because I've just saved them for some time when I write a larger thing.
Yeah.
I get invited, sir, we are tonight 8 o'clock, please confirm. What's the subject? Sir, we'll let you know. I said, then how do you know I'm an expert at it?
Oh my God. I mean, I've never done that guest coordination for my
Oh.
there is what? So and so jailed. I said, मैं वकील हूँ क्या? मैं उसका भाई हूँ. मुझे क्या पता है?
It's like an extempo topic given to you.
You speak so well. This started off by buffoons like Sohail Seth.
Oh my God.
Now there are many masters of this format. Your Times Now and Republic channels are full of the same faces you see every day. Some of them claim...
Yeah, they have the contract done with the guests most of the time.
Yeah, I don't know what profession they do. If you're there every night shouting, what the hell are you doing?
They paid. I mean, yeah.
And if they have some day when there is... So that's not debate happening. That is cockfights happening. Circus chal raha hai, shor mach raha hai. It's a reality show. And this is a equivalence I had made a long time ago, that panel discussions have become reality shows. The only difference is there it's Big Boss's house, here it is one small studio. So it is, agar reality show ko chote budget pe banana hai, wo Karan Johar ka reality show hai, ye Madhur Bhandarkar ka. Lekin hai dono reality show.
So how do you understand even this investigative reporting? Because it has become, what is investigative reporting? Getting into the depth, asking the right question, right manner. Just
actually, I want to add one more point to this. Do we even have, like, okay, so I do remember Tehelka being one. Do we have a history of investigative journalism, proper investigative journalism at all?
Well, I just mentioned that this Harshad story that Sucheta did required a lot of investigation, required going through books of companies, going through, balance sheets of banks.
That's what the business journalists to do. Sorry to interrupt. I mean, because she was into...
I mean, they've been done, my own colleague, Raman Kripal, who's our managing editor, he did that entire Ranjit Singh CBI cage parrot report. That was his. That required a lot of investigation, going through diaries, the logs of, entries and exits into the CBI house and stuff. So an interview is an interview. An interview can be a part of an investigative report. But an interview by itself cannot be an investigative report. It can be an interview that is in nature a probing, a combative, an interview that is trying to investigate something, but it's not a report. A report will require a lot more than just an interview. So now there are different styles of interviews that people have. Like, for example, there was Rendezvous with Simi Garewal.
Mm-hmm. I loved it.
It was one of the most soft kind of, it was not even interview in the sense of journalistic in nature. It was like the predecessor to Karan Johar's show. However, if you see the Jayalalitha episode in that, Jayalalitha has never been more candid than she was there.
Are you saying that it should be on how you get the information out?
And so it's different people have different, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Karan Johar, some of his interviews work. Some of them just don't, because he's just interrupting people all the time. I think Barkha Dutt does some amazing interviews. I think Rajdeep's interviews are very uncle type. So I don't get that much value from them. I think he's a very sweet guy and all that, but I just don't think that's his core competence. I mean, reporting maybe. So I just think that an interview by itself can be, so just because you're not fighting with someone in the interview doesn't mean that it's a softball interview. And just because you are fighting doesn't mean it's investigative. What I'm saying is that your audience should go back enriched in some way. If the interview is supposed to be informative. Now, if I'm interviewing a scientist, then am I trying to get, admit that you have robbed a bank. By
Yes.
if I want to know from an epidemiologist, boss, ye hai kya? Jo, this COVID. So then how I'll approach the interview will be different, and it'll be from a point of ignorance because it is such a highly specialized field.
True.
If I were to do an interview with an environmentalist today or someone who is an expert or has done a thesis on the impact of air pollution on children. Abhi nikla tha infants, under the age of 1,19,000 have died or something of that sort. Now, Delhi mein itni badi pollution. Then I will approach that interview in a different way. If I'm talking to the environment minister, then I'll approach the interview in a different way. So there is no interview ka
Standard.
hona chahiye. And if different people it has to be consistent with your personality. If you're a combative kind of person, it'll suit you. But suppose you're not a combative person, then if you try to do that, you may look foolish. So then do an interview that, that doesn't come across as a jhagda or as an investigative piece, but let the audience go back enriched, having learned something more than they did, or you can just go back, amused like me and Vivek Agnihotri. I don't think.
Basically, idea is if you're able to get the facts out, you're a good interviewer.
I
Otherwise, it
saw that
doesn't.
one.
I
I
mean,
saw that one.
so there is no, it's not, it's like saying, I want to make a movie. You can make a movie that is social commentary. You can make a movie that's entertaining. You can make a movie that is a murder mystery. You can make just general shit which people will watch. I mean, you can make a dabang. So I'm not saying that there is no one right thing to do,
Right.
but there has to be equilibrium in what you are trying to do, how you go about it, and what the audience extracts from it. If that equilibrium is not there, then you're just doing time pass, which too many people are.
What do you think the priority is right now for news media? Whether that's independent journalists, whether that's media houses, what do you think is the actual priority when it comes to news as an industry or and I mean present day, not ideal?
Right now, the priority is just eyeballs here for legacy media, for chunk that represents news in India by the sheer size of audience. I think their priority is TRPs. To get that, if they have to, okay, not TRPs. Their priority is money. And because of their model, that money will either come through the private sector ads or through government ads. Like of late, Hathras has happened, but you'll see the most ads these days are Yogi Ji's ads, at least in Delhi papers. You can go see some of the websites also. They have Yogi Ji's banners up there. How wonderful he is and what amazing work he's doing. So their entire push right now is, let us get those ads. And to get those ads, you need either eyeballs, which are equivalent to a big boss or a Kaun Banega Crorepati, or you need to suck up to the government. And that is the priority of most legacy media right now.
As a part of the segment, Abhinandan, you've given us so much time. We have a caller. She's a student with IP University. She's a mass comm student. And we generally take one caller. So Chetna is joining us with her question. Again, I think here we have her.
Hi. So firstly, I'm just totally fangirling over you and your wall. It's just total vibes. So yeah, I'm really excited. We just talked about the responsibility of media and how it has become a jungle and like a circus, right? But at the end of the day, this circus has been, people are watching it, right? So shouldn't there be a sense of responsibility and accountability on the end of audience as well? Because I feel like audience has this voyeuristic approach towards news and they are always looking to blame somebody. So shouldn't it be like both ways?
Well, what you're saying is not wrong. Of course, the audience should have a sense of responsibility, just like every human being should have a sense of responsibility, not just in what you view, but in what you do in life generally. But that has nothing to do with the news professionals and organizations, because their responsibility is way, way bigger. There's a bit like saying that, the Janta gets the politicians it deserves. So if you have corrupt politicians, you should vote better. Sure, we should vote better. But that is an equivalence that I'm not comfortable with. You cannot equate the prime minister of a country to a laborer casting his vote and the responsibility being the same. So people have not suddenly become voyeuristic and our values haven't suddenly become all decrepit. People were always voyeuristic. People always, wanted, even when before you kids were born, when I was young, when there used to be the Iranian Film Festival or some retrospective of a film director films like Ankur and Nishant and all these Sham Benegal films and all. I remember watching them in Siri Fort. There used to be like 12 of us in the hall. I mean, I used to walk to Chanakyapuri and I used to watch a film with like 10 people in a hall for 1,000 and walk back. But if there was, Sholay released or one of those, or Hum, Jumma, Chumma, De, the bloody, everyone is sitting dancing and all. So it isn't that those people, they were very smart, but so the news, people will always want to be entertained. The sense of what will always be there. It is a bad excuse that is why we should become like this. And in fact, just the other day, I was on a panel with I forget who it was, but one of these news. I think it was the lady who heads an ANI. That we will just democracy. No, sorry. I was on a panel with this. He's, I think, considered a right-wing thinker, whatever that means. He said that how can you accuse them of doing news that is bad, or them doing a disservice to news? Are you saying that all those people who watch them are fools? Are you saying it's anti? I mean, it went into a different zone. He says, then you are undemocratic. Then you believe people should not be allowed to vote. I said, aisa hai, boss, if you're saying eyeballs determine that, since people want that, that's what we should do. Porn has the most hits anywhere in the world. So aisa karo, aap news ko chodo. Oh, we were talking about advertising. The whole conversation was that, all these ads saying we won't advertise on toxic channels. And I was saying that's a good thing to do this. And this guy was saying these undemocratic people, they want to, if just because people are watching it, that is what people want. That is good. That means they don't even want people to elect who they want. So I said, "Phir aisa karo, say, get all the political parties to tie up with porn sites. कि आप यहाँ porn पे आ जाओ, vote भी कर लो, आपको voter turnout भी high हो जाएगा." मतलब ये कौन सी अकल की बात हुई? लोग तो हमेशा ऐसे होंगे ना. ये नई बात तो है नहीं.
It's pretty natural, that means.
So all I'm saying is there will always be fewer people interested in news, but you have to cater to those fewer people. You cannot start catering to everyone and say, "मैं तो दमंगी बनाऊंगा हर रात."
So Abhinandan, are you saying when Barka says don't watch news for entertainment, she's not being quite sensible there?
No,
she's saying,
I think we should tell people don't watch news for entertainment, watch entertainment for entertainment. But that I can say that as an appeal to people, but I cannot say that is equal to me calling out the news people. So whenever I get a chance, I'll say be more responsible in what you watch. But I won't put the onus of what has happened to news on the people. That is on them who's making it.
I want to talk to you about satire.
Sure.
Because it was very interesting to me that my consumption pattern has changed. I don't look at news channels anymore because that looks like a satire to me now, where actual satirists look like news. And I know there's a meme doing around on the internet, so it's kind of weird. But how did that come about? How has that become more relevant now? Like, how is satire actually giving more news than actual news? I'm hooked on the NL YouTube handle for a very long time. So I do watch most of them.
Thank you for that. See, satire, I think, is a very good way to take news to people who don't want to be bored with, just the way news was treated. I think it has been an excellent innovation in social commentary, in news dissemination, and just getting people engaged with political thought and political ideas. Also, at least in India, where journalists and most legacy news organizations are so shit scared, I think what satirists do is they keep pushing the line of where we can have discussion and what all we can talk about. So they keep pushing the size of the dance floor so that journalists can come and occupy and dance. But journalists aren't pushing that line, and satirists are. The kind of things many satirists say, many films that deal with political kind of commentary through satire.
Like, I love what Akash is doing. Akash Banerjee.
Fantastic. I think Akash is doing, stand-up comics, stuff like what Kunal does, stuff like Sanjay Rujara, Aisi Taisi Democracy. I mean, if you haven't seen Aisi Taisi Democracy, I mean, the way they take Modi to the cleaners, my God. Now, no journalist would dare to do that. But the thing is, if there are 100 journalists in that audience, they say, these guys have got away with it. Let me try.
Yeah.
I think satire forces you to try to be braver.
Mm-hmm.
It shames journalists into bravery. I think that's something that it does. And other than that, you can make commentary that you can't through news reports.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk about a person's propensity to maybe having a lifestyle that is not entirely conducive to the role to the position that they occupy. I can do commentary about that in satire. I don't think it's fair to do it as part of news.
As news.
I mean, something like what Kunal Kamra does is also satire. I mean, because it's quite
absolutely yes.
It gets quite controversial with the way they cross their line into getting completely against a personality or kind of hounding them. No.
Yeah, but I don't think they are news professionals. They can get behind a personality. Their content can be completely, and most satirists have picked a side. I mean, everywhere in the world, a satirist is not an equal opportunities offender. A satirist is typically one who will say that this is the guy whose ass I'm going to kick, and he will kick that person's ass every night or at every performance. And that's fine, because there may be another satirist. What I'm saying is that it is not news, but it is political commentary. And that does feed into and contribute to the news discourse, which is very valuable.
Before I let you skip out, since I've seen different aspects of you as a producer of contents, satirist and a journalist, and I don't know how to define you as one person. How, if you are given chance to go back in time, would you want to be a journalist? Today.
If I could go back in time, I'd want to spend my life playing football and dancing. Those are the two things that make me happiest.
So, okay, that's the current thing that you wish you could have done.
Awesome.
Well, when I was young, there was no way to make a living by playing football or by dancing. Today there is. So I wish I could go back and just train in sport and in dance. That's what I'd like to do.
Another question is, if today you're given a chance to make a movie on media or something that could, a content of a kind, or what would you call it? Is there something that's already in your head that you think you would call it?
It's already written. It's registered in the Film Writers Guild, whatever it is in Bombay. I wrote it 7 years ago, I think 10 years ago. I just haven't had the time to produce it.
What is that?
It's called Our Exclusive Report. And there is another script I've written. It is a satire on the film industry, because I also worked as a assistant director for a year in Bombay on Filhal, Meghna Gulzar's first film with Tabu and Sushmita. And before that, I worked as a camera assistant on Monsoon Wedding. So that film is called Zara Hatke. So that was a satire on everyone wanted to make a Hatke film. But
are we going to see that happen? Because I really like that exclusive report thing. I mean, it would come out like a web series. I was telling someone we really don't have a web series on the real journalism till now, like something relevant and...
Maybe I just think that there's just this much time that you have. How much can you pack in? Let's see, once maybe Newslaundry is a little better established and has a larger team, then I can go and pursue other interests.
Hire us. We're there to be outsourced by you officially.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Abhinandan. Thank you all for your time. Aadhar, over to you, and thank you
so much, Abhinandan.
Thank you.